Welcome to Therapeutic Window. I'm Pat Sharp, and today we're going to be talking about cystic fibrosis and the amazing medical advancements that have changed this from a devastating, life-threatening disease for thousands of people to now what is more of a manageable condition. So in 2019, there was a huge breakthrough in the treatments for cystic fibrosis. And cystic fibrosis, or CF for short, is an extremely debilitating but relatively rare genetic condition. It primarily affects the lungs and the pancreas, but it also affects some other organs. CF is caused by the production of a thick, sticky mucus that leads to chronic lung infections, digestive system problems, and ultimately reduces the life expectancy for people suffering from CF. So cystic fibrosis is often diagnosed in children before birth as part of a prenatal genetic testing panel, and there's estimated to be around 70,000 to 100,000 people worldwide currently suffering from CF, and about 30,000 of those are in the United States. Now, for decades, managing cystic fibrosis involved a complex combination of medications and therapies, including lung clearance techniques, and specifically physically scraping this thick mucus layer from the lungs to clear the airways. But recently, there have been huge medical advancements in the treatment of CF that have significantly impacted patients' lives and increased life expectancies. And among these breakthroughs, one that really stands out is the discovery of this new medication called Trikafta. And Trikafta has been an absolute game changer in the field of cystic fibrosis treatment. It's significantly changed the lives of people suffering from CF. But to understand why Trikafta is such a big deal, and I think this is one of the most amazing stories in medicinal chemistry, I think it's really important and useful to understand what actually causes cystic fibrosis. So cystic fibrosis is caused by mutations, genetic mutations, in the cystic fibrosis transmembrane conductance regulator gene, or the CFTR gene. The CFTR gene encodes for a protein called the CFTR protein, and that protein plays a crucial role in regulating the amount of water and salt on either side of the cell surface. This is particularly important in the lungs and the pancreas, and that's why cystic fibrosis has most of its symptoms in those organs, but it also does affect other organs as well. It's an autosomal recessive genetic disorder, which means that an individual must inherit the mutated copy from both parents in order to actually have the symptoms of CF. So normally the CFTR protein acts as a chloride channel, and it allows chloride ions to move out of the cells, and it regulates the movement of water across the cell surface. And this process helps maintain a thin layer of mucus that's important for normal lung function, digestion, and other processes in the body. In individuals with CF, the mutation in the CFTR gene leads to a dysfunction in the CFTR protein. And the specific mutation can vary among individuals, and this results in different degrees of the severity of cystic fibrosis among different people. The mutant CFTR protein may be produced in low amounts, it may not reach the cell surface effectively, and once it reaches the cell surface, it may not conduct the transmission of chloride ions from one side to the other as effectively as a normal CFTR protein would. And now, the defective CFTR protein disrupts the normal movement of chloride ions through one or other of these mechanisms, and that affects the amount of water on the surface of the tissues, like the lungs. And this can cause the mucus in the lungs to become thick, sticky, and dehydrated. And this thick, sticky mucus in the lungs obstructs the airways. It leads to chronic lung infections, inflammation, and over time, this damages the lungs. And the impaired function of the CFTR protein also affects the pancreas. It prevents the release of digestive enzymes, and they're needed for proper digestion and nutrient absorption. And so one of the symptoms that's often seen in children suffering CF, and this used to be one of the ways that it was originally diagnosed, was it was very difficult for those children to put on weight because they weren't absorbing nutrients from the food they were eating. But additionally and importantly, the altered mucus and the inability to clear it effectively creates a really favorable environment for bacteria to thrive. And this is what leads to chronic lung infections and causes a lot of hospitalizations for people suffering from CF throughout their lifetime. So Trikafta is a medication that specifically targets and addresses this underlying defect in the CFTR protein. It's designed to restore CFTR function, improve the movement of chloride ions and water across the cell surface, and thereby helps alleviate all these symptoms downstream of that in CF patients. So Trikafta is a really amazing medicine. It's actually a combination of three different molecules So the three components of Trikafta all work together, and they work in three different ways. So Alexicaftor helps promote the proper folding of the CFTR protein, aiding its transport to the cell surface, and this helps increase the availability of functional CFTR on the cell surface to transport chloride ions. Tezacaftor helps stabilize the CFTR protein and prevents its degradation, so it increases its longevity or its half-life at the cell surface, and this again allows the CFTR protein to remain active for a longer period of time and improves chloride channel function. Ivacaftor enhances the activity of the CFTR protein that has already reached the cell surface. It helps open up the chloride channel and improves the movement of chlorides from one side of the cell membrane to the other. And this leads to better regulation of salt-water balance, resulting in a thinner, more normal mucus production. So the clinical trials for Trikafta were extremely impressive. In 4 weeks, people using Trikafta saw a significant improvement in lung function, sustained all the way through to week 24. There was a almost 14% increase in the amount of volume of air that the patients could expire, and this also increased slightly over the 24 weeks. There was a 65% reduction in the annualized rate of pulmonary exacerbations, a 71% reduction in hospitalizations, and a 78% reduction in lung infections that required an IV. And these, later to the amount of hospitalizations being reduced and the amount of lung infections being reduced, not only ultimately increase the life expectancy of people suffering from cystic fibrosis, but this really improves their quality of life. Cystic fibrosis patients are usually continually traveling to the hospital to get antibiotics by IV to clear their lung infections, but this kept them out of hospital and keeps their life more normal, as well as increasing their lung function and improvement over the course of their life. It is important to note, though, that Trikafta's effectiveness really depends on the exact mutations in the CFTR protein in each patient, and they can be different. But nevertheless, it's been shown to significantly benefit the majority of patients suffering from CF, reducing respiratory symptoms, enhancing nutrition absorption, prolonging lifespan. But although it's not a cure for CF, it doesn't correct the defective gene, but it does support the production of normal CFTR protein function as it's produced, which does mean that this is a medication that does need to be taken for the lifetime of the patient. And ideally, the development of a gene therapy that replaces the defective CFTR gene could offer more of a one-time cure. But the development of gene therapies is a really new field and is much more difficult technology to develop. Yeah, thanks for listening to the story of Trikafta. I think this is an amazing example of technology development in biomedicine that has a huge impact on people's lives. And before this medicine was around, the life expectancy for people suffering cystic fibrosis was about half of that of a normal person, but this really now helps normalize their life and their life expectancy. It's exactly this type of medical technology that I think really deserves more media attention, and I'm really hoping I can bring many more examples of these in future episodes. So like and subscribe, and you'll be hearing more about them in the future.